Well, good day and welcome to Model Railroad Academy. I'm Ron Marsh, your host for today, and today we're going to be talking about some unusual tools or maybe less common tools that are really helpful for us in various model railroad projects. I have personally made and I've also seen lots of different videos about tool roundups, about the basic tools that are kind of the essential tools if you're first getting into the hobby, the things that you really have to have in order to build a model railroad, to build structures, to scratch build or whatever. Today I'm going to talk about maybe some less common tools, but nonetheless some tools that can really be helpful in a wide variety of different things that we do in building model railroad layouts, building structures, working on rolling stock and locomotives, etc. So I'm going to share these with you, and I think and I hope that some of these will be really helpful to you. So let's get started. I'm going to turn the camera down to my workspace and show you exactly what we have. Now, the tools that I want to show you today are going to be greatly varied. I mean, we're looking at everything from some power tools to some hobby-specific hand tools, to some things that maybe aren't created for the hobby but can be really useful for us. The first thing that I'm going to mention, and this is maybe not so out of the ordinary, but I think it's really important, and that is literally what you're looking at right now, and that is a good hobby mat, a good mat surface to work on. The places that I find that create the mats that really work the best are found in hobby stores that cater to quilting. Now, this one that I have in front of you is a quilting type of mat, and they're very handy. They got a grid on them that can be helpful to as far as lining things up and even some basic measuring. They're self-healing so that you're not cutting into your tabletop if you cut into them. Very handy to have a good work surface mat. I have a couple of them. This one is just a basic one that you see here. The other one that I have is actually two-sided. It has two colors. It's green on one side, which is probably the most common, black on the other. And the different colors can actually be helpful depending on what work that you're doing, what you're working on, as it kind of helps your work stand out. The first real tool I want to show you today is become recently one of my new favorites when it comes to layout building for working on bench work and a variety of things, and that is this power tool. This is an oscillating tool, or what is sometimes referred to as a multi-tool, and it has an oscillating head right here. And then you can attach to it a variety of blades and attachments for everything from cutting, softer materials like wood, drywall, masonite. You can get metal cutting blades, which if you're ever doing a little work where you're changing some things on your layout, you got a screw or a nail that you can't pull. You can use that metal cutting blade for cutting through. It's really handy. It has the blade that kind of comes down and is really flat right here with the blade on the end. So it's fantastic for flush cutting. Every once in a while I'll get in a situation where I need to cut something flush with another surface. This works fantastically for that. I've just discovered again within the last several months that this tool is an absolute must-have in my opinion. If you're long-term building a model railroad. Now we're going to get to some more hobby-specific kinds of tools, and these aren't in any particular order. I literally have them on my table here, and I'm kind of grabbing them one at a time. This tool here is called a Nibbler, and I don't know that these are so uncommon, but they're very handy if you ever do any scratch building or kit bashing, because literally what you have a little shear here on the end, and I'll turn it to where you can see as I squeeze it, that little shear pulls down into the metal head at the top, and what it does is it literally nibbles out material, and this is great for cutting holes in the middle of materials like styrene. So if you're cutting out windows or you're cutting out doors, you can drill a hole just big enough for the nibbler head to go into, and then you can nibble out large bits of material. You don't have to spend all of the time filing and wedging, or filing and sanding that sometimes can take a very long time. Great tool for removing larger amounts of material from the middle of a sheet of styrene, for example. Clamps. I always like to talk about clamps, and some of my favorites are these little quick grip clamps. And of course, if you do any woodworking, you're probably familiar with larger versions of these that you may use in your shop. These come in a huge variety of sizes, and they're very handy in all sizes. I use the larger ones sometimes whenever I'm building bench work and need to clamp larger pieces of material. But these little 4 and 6 inch ones are really handy for clamping together models whenever you're gluing them together. I use these for working on structure kits and kit bashes all the time. Absolutely love them. One of the nice things about them is, you know, they're not spring loaded. You adjust the tension that you have by how much pressure you put on the handle itself. So if you need just a little pressure, you can do that. If you need more pressure, you can do that, and you don't run the risk of breaking something because of a spring-loaded clamp that you can't adjust the pressure on. So these are a great tool to use. This pair of pliers here, and I've had these for a very long time, but this is actually a set of jeweler's pliers, and if you'll notice, one jaw is rounded, and it's also tapered. It's got it's smaller at the end, one end, and larger back towards the plier. The other jaw is cupped, and this is made for bending wire. Specifically, was developed to use to bend like rings on necklaces or bracelets, that sort of thing. What this is really handy for, of course, if you work with brass and do any kind of scratch building and need to bend some brass rod or something, it's handy for that. But it's great for adjusting those trip pins on the couplers of your rolling stock. You can, if you've got a pin that's a little too low catching on things, you can put it down in the end of this and give it just a little bit of pressure and bend a little tighter curve in that trip pin and solve that problem. This is a machinist block, and some of you use these. Some of this may be new to you. These typically are sold in pairs. I actually have 4 of these on my workbench, and what they are is it's just a piece of nice heavy steel that has been machined to be a perfectly square, 3D rectangle. So all of the edges, all the corners are perfectly square. And these are great for holding things square while you're gluing them. Again, like structures or whatever, you can just use the edges. Maybe put a rubber band around it if you need to hold it in place. They also make great weights because they are very, very heavy. And these the holes that you see, some of them are threaded and some of them are not. You can actually get bolts that you can use to put multiple ones of these. This is a 3-2-1 block. They also make larger sizes. But put multiples of these machinist blocks together if you need a larger one. And again, they all are still machined to be the exact same size, so everything will be flush and square. Love using machinist blocks for a wide variety of things. Let's see. This, inside of this tube, I have what's called a touch and flow applicator. It may be called other names as well by other companies. And I hope you can see that on camera. Literally what I have here is this is a glass tube, and it has basically the equivalent of a blunt hypodermic needle on the end of it. The needle is hollow, but it's blunt. It's not sharp on the end. And this is great for applying solvent cement. You can fill this with the solvent cement, and then capillary action will draw that solvent cement out into a joint. So if you put the needle down on a joint and draw it along the joint, it'll put a very fine bead of that solvent cement into that joint and yet give you a good consistent glue joint. This is great for using solvent cement on corners that will show, because if you've ever tried to apply a solvent cement with a brush in a corner that's going to show, you know how easy it is to mar the surface of the plastic that you're gluing. This will help keep you from doing that because, again, you're placing just a very fine bead along that joint. depending on where you get it and in what form you buy it. When I bought mine, it came with a little kit, and it came with this squeeze bottle that fits onto the top end, and I can squeeze that, put it down into my solvent cement, and then let it go, and it draws the solvent cement up into the glass tube. If you get one that doesn't come with a little squeeze bottle, you can use an ear syringe for that. It will work just as well. I just would advise that if you use it for this, you don't use it for for any other purposes, especially any medical purposes. So touch and flow applicator, very, very handy tool. Here's a tool that I picked up somewhat recently, and I've wanted one of these for a long time and finally got one. And if you don't know what that is, you might look at it and say, okay, it looks kind of like metal Pac-Man. Yeah, sort of. This is actually made to help you easily find the exact center of round objects. And this one is made for objects up to 1.5 inches or 2 inches. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head. This is great if you ever work with dowel rod and you need to drill a hole or a screw in the exact center of the end of a dowel rod, or any other round stock that you need to find the exact center of. And the way it works is, I just got a paint jar here. I'm going to use the lid. And you just simply put the lid, the end, in this case the lid, the end of your round stock into this little V on the bottom, and it gives you that straight line. Get a pin here, and I'll actually write right on this lid. So I can put that across there, and I can just make a line. Whoops. That may not work out so well because there's writing carved into this lid, but hopefully you'll get the idea. So I make a line there, and then I turn it crossways, and I make another line. I should have found something smoother to do this with. But anyway, where those two lines intersect is the exact center of that round object. And so if you ever need to find those center points, again, for drilling a hole, driving a screw, whatever, these are really, really fantastic. And I know you can get these from Micromark and probably some other places as well. I'm going to show you a couple of tools that I made. This one, first of all, and this is a tool that you can purchase, but you can make it just as easily. This is a little jig that I can use for painting the faces of wheel sets, and I can paint them with an airbrush with this and not get any paint on the treads themselves. And literally what it is I made this out of some 40 thousandths styrene. Drilled holes that were the exact size of 30, I think this is 36 inch on this one. Yeah, 36 inch wheels. Drilled a hole that was exactly that size. And I cut the two pieces and put them on top of each other, taped them down so they drilled the holes exactly straight across from each other on this piece and on this piece. And then I just kind of routed out some little wedges, little holes in the end. And I used some other styrene and made these little pieces with some little ears on them. So that allows the jig to kind of snap together, but not be permanent. And then just use a rubber band to hold it together. If I can get that back in the hole. There we go. Just snap it together like that with the little ears inside the little holes. Use a rubber band to hold it together, and then I can take a wheel set and just snap it right into those holes. It's got 4 holes, so I could use this and paint one set of wheels for one car, or for one car, for 2 trucks at the same time, 4 axles. If you wanted to be able to do a lot more cars at the same time, you could make one of these and make it larger and be able to paint as many wheels at a time as you wanted to. So that's a homemade tool that's very, very handy. Here's another homemade tool that maybe is my favorite. Literally what this is this is a little makeup mirror that came out of a compact that my wife had and used up and was discarding. And I took it and I just used some hot glue and glued just a scrap of 1x2 to the back. And you can look at the back and see I intentionally glued it off center. It's flush with the bottom, but there's a little space at the top. There's a little bit of space on this side and more space on this side. What I use this tool for is anytime I am working on track that has been installed on the layout, it's very hard to see the back side of the track. So if, for example, I'm soldering feeder wires, I need to be able to see what I'm doing back there. Or also, if I'm working on painting or ballasting or something else, and I need to see the back side of the track, I can take this mirror and set it up behind the track, and it allows me to see the track. And I can turn it to the different angles that gives me a different view depending upon what angle I'm looking at the track. That way, one of those angles is going to give me a good view. And I found that this makes really, really easy work of working on track that is on the back side of the rails. I first thought, well, everything's going to be backwards, it's going to be hard. Really makes that work very, very simple. So a great little homemade tool that is very useful. Gauges. Here's some things. Now, again, this isn't probably so uncommon, but I'm going to mention it because it's very, very important, I think. Here I have an N-scale NMRA standards gauge, and I also have a coupler gauge, and this is an N-scale coupler gauge made from Micromark. You can get both of these in other scales as well from various companies. You really need these gauges to make sure that your track is in gauge and is going to be working well. And again, the NMRA standards gauge we can use to measure the gauge of the rails, but it also gives us a number of different standards here for working on turnouts, for checking flange ways. This will help us check coupler height as well. Wheel width we can check with this gauge, because sometimes I've had some locomotives that have come with the wheels out of gauge. I need to adjust them. This will answer that question for me. This little gauge helps me to know that my couplers are at the right height on my rolling stock. You just literally put it on a piece of track like this, put a rolling stock on, and the couplers should match up perfectly if they're right. You also can turn this gauge over, and it's got this little ramp here that will tell you if your trip pins are the right height. They should just slide up onto the top of the edge of that wedge. They shouldn't catch on it or go under it. And then there's also these little pins here, which if you use uncoupling magnets or anything else that is in between the rails of your track work, those pins will tell you if you have enough clearance, and if you don't, then they will catch on it as you slide this across. So those standard gauges are very, very important, very helpful to help you get track work that will work consistently and work very well, and help eliminate derailments and other problems that can make life frustrating on a model railroad. This is a microbrush. Now that's probably not that unusual, and I use a lot of these in a variety of sizes. But of course, microbrushes they're kind of disposable depending on what you're using it for. Sometimes I may use one 2 or 3 times. Like if I'm using paint, I may wash it out and reuse it a couple of times. But ultimately, the heads get dried up and aren't any good, and we need to throw them away. Well, I don't always throw them away, because if you take a used microbrush like this, and this one's used, the head looks clean, but I think it's been used for solvent. It's real stiff. I take that head, pinch it, hold it real hard, and just twist this, and the head came off. And now what I have is a great little plastic applicator for applying CA or other types of adhesives or whatever. It's a great plastic applicator for working on things. A lot of people use toothpicks for that, and that's fine, except the toothpick is wood and it tends to suck the moisture out of whatever you're applying. This won't do that, and so I find that these are very, very helpful for that reason. This is a scratch brush, and literally what it is, it looks like a pin, but as I push on it, you see it has inside a stick of fiberglass, and I want to adjust it so that there's just a little bit of that fiberglass sticking out, and it gives a very rough surface. And this is handy whenever you want to rough up something small. Now this is a small one. I'm an N scaler. You can get them larger if you're working in HO or O or other scales. But literally what I can do is I can scratch on a surface. And my favorite thing to use this for is if I'm weathering a piece of rolling stock and I want to apply some weathering as though the paint job on the lettering has partially worn away. This will allow me to scratch that off and use it gently and scratch it off a little bit at a time and get that nice weathered look to the lettering and the decals on weathering stock and other things that we would weather. And you can find other uses for it as well. Anytime you need to have something abrasive that you can control in a very small area, this is very, very handy for that. This is a set of flush cutting tweezers that are great for cutting items out of sprues. It's my favorite thing to use this for. I don't use it for anything else because I don't want to mar the cutting surfaces on this. But literally, you just anytime you've got a piece of a model that's in a sprue, you got that thin bit of plastic, you can come in and get very, very flush with that. Here, I've got a sprue here that everything's been cut out of this sprue, but I think we can get the idea. This has got these little nubs on it, and I can get this in here and get very close to that sprue, and those are pretty big, so I'm not going to be able to cut through that, but I can cut it very flush, and just like that. Cuts very well, cuts very straight, and it leaves you with a minimal amount of sanding to do. If we put that flush part right up against the part and nip the gate off, leaves you with not a lot of sanding that you have to do in order to have that ready to go for your modeling project. Got just a couple of items left here. This is a push drill, and I've had this for a very long time, and you can find these. I know Micromark carries them in other places, but I know a lot of people who see it and say like, man, where did you get that? I really like that. You could put a drill bit in here. This is made from micro drill bits, and put it down on your surface, the drill bit, and literally you could push it. You hold right here. This part spins, and you just push it down, and it pushes the drill and spins the drill as you push it. If you're working on a project and you need to be able to hold something very, very, still and drill into it, this is great for that because it only takes one hand. I don't have to try to sit here and spin it like I do a pin vise. I still have a pin vise and I still use it for a lot of things, but often this little push drill is a great solution to be able to quickly drill holes in items. One last item that I'm going to show you, and that is this item right here. This is a magnetic gluing jig. It's actually metal. What you see in the bottom of the blue is just a piece of cardstock that I've put in there. Because it's metal, the lights shine off of it, and so I'm just trying to reduce some glare. But this box is metal, and so it's magnetic, and it comes with a number of magnets, and you can use this for holding objects square while you're gluing them in place, because the angle between the sides and the bottom is square, so you can put some pieces in there. Of course, the angles in the corners are square as well. It also, however, has some corners that you see that have some gaps in them, which will allow you to make a T-joint if you need to. So a piece of styrene can go through that gap in the angle, and your other piece of where I said styrene, wood, whatever the work is, the other one can go here. You can make a nice square T-joint as well, and this is very, very handy for structure building, and I use it all the time as I am building structures. So those are some of the tools that I've acquired over the years that, again, aren't your basic tools that maybe you want to have in your first starting toolkit, but as you progress in the hobby, as you get involved in more aspects of the hobby and are really trying to improve your work, these are some things that can really be helpful to you and you're going to find useful. So I hope there's at least one or two of those that maybe were new to you that maybe you'll want to check out. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you all have a fantastic day, and I hope that you get an opportunity to work on your model railroad today as you continue to pursue this great hobby.